Hole in the Woods, Riley St. James. I walk the expansive backyard of a lakeside house belonging to former Derby detective Ray Poland, who I see is dressed in a bee suit and tending to one of his dozen beehives near the lakeshore. He motions for me to come closer, but I hang back and wait, enjoying the view and the breeze that cools my warm cheeks. Plus, I'm fearful of getting stung. Not allergic or anything, just don't like the pain. I clear my throat and sense a little scratch at the back of my throat that makes me wonder if I'm coming down with a cold. It's probably just exhaustion, I tell myself, because there's absolutely no time to be sick right now. After a few minutes, Ray approaches, cradling 2 large jars of honey. "Hi, Detective Poland? I'm Detective Riley St. James," I say. "I know who you are, and I wondered when you'd be coming around. Here, it's good for what ails you," he says, handing me a jar. "And you look like you could use a little boost." "How could you tell?" "I'm trained to observe," he says with a smile. "It's unpasteurized and raw, full of antioxidants." I take the jar, its contents still warm from the hive. I think I just need more sleep. Take a couple spoonfuls a day, wards off bacteria, soothes the throat. "A spoonful of sugar," I say wistfully, recalling my days as a kid watching Mary Poppins with my mom who was nostalgic for old Disney flicks. "Except this stuff's a superfood," he says. Ray takes his hood and gloves off. "How are they treating you at the station?" "It was a warm welcome at first. Now I think they're tolerating me." He laughs. "Come, take a seat on the patio. You don't mind sitting outside, do you?" "I'd love a little fresh air. It's a beautiful place you have here," I say. "My sanctuary." Ray shows me to a large patio table on the back deck of the house. The view from here is even more stunning than from the yard, and I can't seem to take my eyes off the peaceful waters lapping the shore. "Well, I'd say you've earned this life," I tell him, more than slightly envious of the view. "How's the investigation going?" he asks. "I'm catching up. I think I found something interesting yesterday. Do you know a Betty Taylor?" I can't help but unscrew my honey jar and dip my finger into the gooey sweetness. It's cut with a taste of something I recognize but can't pinpoint. Woodsy, barky, piney. My taste buds take to the savory flavors. What is this exactly? I have another lick, and Ray reads my mind. "Rosemary. The hive is near a large rosemary bush," he says. "It's like nothing I've ever tasted before." Ray doesn't know Betty Taylor. He peels off his beet suit and lays it across one of the patio chairs, and I tell him about my conversation with her, and Ray goes quiet, his eyes drifting to the middle of the lake. "Interesting," he says, with a sad shake of his head. "Do you think she really heard Nina's scream?" "She remembered it after all these years. That counts for something," he says. "Yes, it seemed very personal and disturbing to her," I add. "I think it still haunts her." "I suppose it does." "I'm just having a hard time believing she never heard about Nina's disappearance and put 2 and 2 together. People have their reasons, and most don't want to go borrowing trouble. This is a small community, you know." I think about the abusive Mr. Taylor as I follow Ray's gaze to the fishing boat trolling the shore around the lake. 2 fishermen drop drag lines and wait for a catch. The water ripples concentrically from their boat bottom across the still lake. I met Solomon Newton the first night I was here. He didn't know who I was. "I saw it, Detective Poland. I saw the evil in his eyes." Ray nods again. "Here's something you won't find in those files. Did you know 5 years after Nina's death, Solomon served 6 years in Jackson for assault and rape?" My eyes widen. "And after that?" "He was freed, living here. A few years ago, before I retired, I pulled him over for speeding and found duct tape, rope, and lubricating jelly in his trunk. I had to let him go." "What? Why?" "It's not legal to own those items, and there was nothing else on which I could arrest him at the time. says Ray. He had a rape kit in his trunk. Ray nods sadly. I put out an alert with the Michigan police. I got some hits back from a detective in Upper Michigan about some unsolved murder cases that have a striking resemblance to Nina's, but again, not enough evidence. That's infuriating. I know. Even more so since he's been the model citizen, at least in the public eye. Town rumors may tell otherwise, I say. Code of silence. Yes, I know. I've been aware, but not privy, Ray says. Be very careful, Riley St. James. You are dealing with the devil. His serious look warns me, like a grandfather instructing a grandchild not to cross a strong stream. It looks manageable on the surface, but underneath, a deadly current will trap and hold you to the bottom. What is Grable hiding? I ask after a moment. I honestly don't know, but you can subpoena his statement if you like. If you were me and you could do it all over again, where would you start? Ray is quiet for a moment as something brooding finds its way through him and then disappears. He looks up at me. Are you familiar with the issue of legend? He asks. Is that some sort of local folklore I'm missing? No. The issue of legend is a forensic analysis term that has to do with the testimony given to the first investigators compared with the testimony you will get today, 30 years later. I'm not sure I understand. I cock my ear towards Poland. You have a record from the first investigators of the case, mine included. This is what they said they saw and experienced the night of Nina's disappearance. Yes, but how does that factor into moving the case forward today? I ask. You need to re-interview them, see what they recall today, see how much things match up. Memories can fade. They become more unreliable, I argue. Usually, but sometimes earlier recollections can become cleaner with space and time. Sometimes there's a detail or two that comes out later. Sometimes a helpful memory suddenly becomes dislodged from the brain due to some trigger we can't always explain or understand. Are you saying there are things that couldn't be said then that can be said now? I ask. That's part of it. Have you ever held a memory so strong for years and years? You remember it one way, and then one day something happens. You may not even be thinking about that memory, and an image or a bit of conversation pops into your brain that's associated with that memory. It's like a lost puzzle piece. And when you fit it into the puzzle of that memory, the memory changes. Maybe it rounds it out or becomes more complete or answers a question you had about that event. I nod. Yes, I know that feeling. That's what I mean. Revisit the past with the people who lived it and see if there are any missing puzzle pieces. Do you think I should talk to Silas and Solomon? I ask. Not right away. You don't want to trigger any ripples in the community. Besides, they already know why you're here. It would do you no good to question them. They will stick to their story. It will not change. Leave them alone until you have a solid case against them and can make the arrest. Start with the friends who were with Nina that last night. Okay, Allison Peters, Bradley Hollinga, and Richard Wright. And Kevin Grable, he says. What? Why? He's not listed in the reports. No, but he was with Nina and her friends that night. Why didn't he tell me that? He asked to have his name expunged from the records once he decided to become a police officer. He can do that? He can because he was never a suspect. What do you think he's hiding? It's his story to tell, says Ray. But do you think he's withholding something that could solve this case? I ask. I interviewed Kevin back when he was 17. There was nothing in his statement that led me to believe he was involved in her murder. And since then, I think he's heard and seen things. But my guess is that it's nothing that could be used to build an arrest, or he would have done so. Would he? Ray pauses. I trust Kevin. He isn't exactly chomping at the bit to get this case solved. Keep pressing, Ray says. Detective Poland, be honest with me. Am I on a fool's errand here? No. It was your good instincts that already unearthed the Taylor tip. Seems to me like you've already made a little crack in the code of silence. Betty? I feel like we just kind of stumbled on that one, I sigh. Besides, hearing a girl scream and indistinct male voices doesn't exactly point the finger to Nina or the Newton twins. Everything comes together at the perfect time for the perfect reason for the good of all, including you. You're here for a reason, he says. Ray smiles at me and rises from his seat. The smoker should have released all the bees by now. Time to gather more honey, he says. Ray dons his bee suit and heads back to his bees, and I travel to my truck thinking, how on earth can Ray Poland remain so altruistic after the depths of human grime he's mucked through? I feel my shoulder muscles constrict and realize the source of this tension is my anxiety about Grable. I'm angry that he camped out in my driveway, angry he took my gun, angry that he thought I needed rescuing, angry he won't step up to guide me to more sources, angry that he's holding back local legends, angry that he withheld himself from that report, and angry there's not a darn thing I can do to force him.